Somewhere along the way, somebody decided that the solution to human suffering was to think about it differently, not to change the circumstances, not to actually engage with the difficulty, not to do the slow, uncomfortable, genuinely transformative work of meeting reality as it actually is, just to reframe it, visualize something better, affirm your way to a different outcome, smile at the problem until it feels less like a problem. Choose happiness, as the bumper sticker says, as though happiness were the kind of thing you could simply select from a menu and carry home. And an entire industry grew up around this idea. Books, courses, retreats, apps, influencers with immaculate aesthetics and morning routines, and the specific kind of relentless brightness that starts to feel, after a while, less like genuine joy and more like a very disciplined performance of it. Positive thinking became a cultural religion, complete with its own dogma, its own heretics, and its own particular brand of guilt for the people who tried the affirmations and the vision boards and the gratitude journals and still woke up at 3 in the morning with the weight of their actual life sitting squarely on their chest. Because that's the part the positive thinking industry doesn't have a good answer for, the 3 in the morning part. The part where the reality you've been carefully reframing refuses, stubbornly and with great persistence, to actually change into the thing you've been picturing. Friedrich Nietzsche, who had more cause than most to reach for comfortable illusions, given that he spent the majority of his adult life in significant physical pain, near complete obscurity, and a loneliness that he described in his letters with a rawness that is still difficult to read, chose a different direction entirely. He chose something he called brutal honesty, not about other people, about himself, about reality, about the gap between the life he was living and the life he might have preferred to be living, about the suffering that was genuinely present in his existence, which was considerable and which no amount of positive reframing was going to eliminate, and what he found on the other side of that honest confrontation with reality, rather than the carefully managed, positive version of it, was something that the positive thinking movement promises and almost never actually delivers: a genuine, grounded, tested sense of strength, a real relationship with his own life, including the hard parts, rather than a performed relationship with the version of his life he was supposed to want to project. He called the alternative to positive thinking amor fati, love of fate, and it sounds on the surface like it might be the same thing, another way of being okay with what is, another spiritual practice for accepting circumstances. It is not the same thing. It is almost exactly the opposite. And understanding the difference, really understanding it at the level where it might actually change something in how you relate to your own life, requires being willing to look at some things that positive thinking culture specifically trains you not to look at. That's what this video is. Not comfortable, but real, which, as Nietzsche would insist, is the only kind of thing worth being. This is the thing nobody in the positive thinking space will say to you. And the reason they won't say it is not that they're dishonest. Many of them are entirely sincere. It's that the entire framework of positive thinking is built on a foundational assumption that, once examined clearly, turns out to be much shakier than it appears. The assumption is this: negative feelings, difficult thoughts, and uncomfortable realities are problems to be solved rather than information to be processed. When you feel anxiety, the positive thinking response is replace the anxious thought with a positive one. When you feel grief, the positive thinking response is find the silver lining, focus on what remains rather than what was lost. When you feel anger, the positive thinking response is choose a different emotional state, redirect toward gratitude. When reality is genuinely difficult and genuinely painful, the positive thinking response is change your perspective, because the outside world is not the real source of your suffering, your thoughts about it are. There is a grain of genuine truth in this. The relationship between thought and experience is real, and the idea that we have some influence over our own mental states through deliberate attention is not wrong. But the positive thinking movement takes this grain of truth and constructs from it a foundation that is, in its actual practice, a systematic training in the avoidance of genuine experience. Because here is what happens when you consistently practice replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. You do not actually process the negative information. You suppress it. You redirect your attention away from it before it has had the chance to tell you what it's trying to tell you. And information that is suppressed rather than processed does not disappear. It goes underground. It accumulates. It finds other channels of expression, physical tension, chronic low-grade anxiety, the specific emotional numbness that develops in people who have spent years managing their inner states rather than actually inhabiting them. Nietzsche watched this mechanism operate in the religious culture of his time, which performed a similar function to what positive thinking performs in ours, and he identified it with a precision that remains more than a century later exactly accurate. He called it decadence, not in the casual sense of moral looseness, in the specific philosophical sense of a life orientation turned against itself. A self that instead of engaging with reality and developing through that engagement has learned to protect itself from reality through various forms of managed unreality. And he saw this as not just ineffective but actively destructive, because the energy required to maintain the managed unreality is energy not available for actual development. And because the self that never fully engages with difficulty never develops the genuine strength that difficulty, properly met, produces. Here is the specific mechanism he was pointing at. Strength, genuine psychological strength, the kind that actually holds up under pressure, is not built through the experience of positive states. It is built through the experience of difficulty, fully met, through encountering something genuinely hard, a loss, a failure, an unwelcome truth about yourself or your circumstances, and remaining present to it, actually feeling it, actually thinking about it, actually allowing it to do what it's there to do, inform you, challenge you, develop you in the specific ways that only genuine difficulty can. This is not masochism. This is not the claim that suffering is intrinsically good or that you should seek it out. It is the observation that difficulty, properly engaged with rather than avoided, produces something that looks from the outside like resilience and looks from the inside like the quiet confidence of a person who has been tested and knows what they found. The positive thinking alternative, the consistent replacement of difficult experience with managed positive experience, produces something that looks superficially similar but is fundamentally different. A kind of brightness that has not been tested, a kind of okayness that exists by virtue of having never been challenged rather than by virtue of having been challenged and held. And this untested brightness is, in a very specific sense, fragile in a way that the genuine thing never is, because it depends on the management continuing to work,
on the reframing continuing to succeed, on the positive thoughts continuing to outcompete the negative ones.
And there are moments, 3 in the morning moments, loss moments, genuine crisis moments, when the manager... And there are moments, 3 in the morning moments, loss moments, genuine crisis moments, when the management fails, when the reframing doesn't land, when the positive thought is no match for the reality pressing in. And the person who has been practicing positive thinking rather than genuine engagement with their experience finds themselves in those moments peculiarly unequipped. Not because they're weak, because the strength they thought they were building was actually the strength of the management system rather than their own. Nietzsche's prescription for this, which is considerably more demanding than choosing a positive thought, was to face whatever is actually present, to look at the difficulty, the failure, the painful truth without the mediation of a reframe, to sit with it long enough to actually understand what it's saying, and from that understanding, not from the bypass of it, to develop the actual response that the situation calls for. This process is not comfortable. It is not designed to be. Nietzsche had no interest in comfort as a primary good. He was interested in something he thought was considerably more valuable, the development of a self that has been genuinely tested by genuine reality, and has come through that testing with something authentic, something that cannot be taken away by the next difficult thing, because it was built from difficult things rather than in spite of them. There's also a social dimension to positive thinking that Nietzsche would have recognized immediately as something he'd already diagnosed. Positive thinking culture carries within it a specific form of moral pressure, the implication that if you're not managing to feel positive about your life, you're doing something wrong, that your negative feelings are a failure of mindset rather than a legitimate response to genuine circumstances, that the suffering person is suffering because they haven't tried hard enough to not suffer. This is one of the cruelest things about the positive thinking framework when it's applied without nuance. It takes genuine suffering, suffering that is often the completely appropriate response to genuinely difficult circumstances, and adds to it a layer of self-blame. You're not just struggling, you're struggling wrong. You're not just in pain, you're in pain because you haven't yet achieved the mental discipline required to choose not to be. Nietzsche would have recognized this as a sophisticated variant of exactly the kind of moral framework he most despised, one that serves the comfort of the group. Nobody wants to be around difficult feelings, by making the person experiencing the difficult feelings responsible for their own experience in a way that conveniently removes any obligation on the part of anyone else to actually engage with it. The genuine alternative, his alternative, is to take the suffering seriously, to treat it as information, to ask what it's pointing at rather than how to make it stop. This approach is less immediately comfortable, but it is, in the long run, the only approach that actually addresses the source rather than the surface. And that brings us to the second truth, the one about what's actually at the bottom of the positive thinking industry's enormous appeal, and what it reveals about something Nietzsche identified as the central psychological challenge of modern life. Here is a question that the positive thinking industry has very little incentive to help you ask. Why do so many people feel such an acute need for positive thinking in the first place? Not the immediate answer, the deeper one. Because the immediate answer, I feel bad and I want to feel better, is true as far as it goes, but doesn't actually go very far. The deeper question is, what is producing the background level of anxiety, meaninglessness, and unexamined suffering that makes an entire industry of managed positivity not only viable, but enormously lucrative? Nietzsche had an answer for this, formulated in the late 19th century, that is so precisely applicable to the early 21st that it is somewhat disorienting to read. He called it the crisis of nihilism, and he was careful to distinguish between two kinds, passive nihilism and active nihilism. Passive nihilism, which is the kind that most concerns us here, is what happens when a person or a culture loses its foundational values without replacing them with new ones. When the framework that used to give life its meaning, the religious framework, the cultural narrative, the story about why things matter and what it's all for, begins to feel hollow, but nothing has arrived to take its place. The result is a specific kind of unmoored suffering, a suffering that is particularly hard to address because it doesn't have a clear object. It is not suffering about any specific thing that could be fixed. It is the suffering of a self that has lost its orientation, that no longer knows what it's for, what it's pointed toward, what would make the effort of its own existence feel genuinely worthwhile. This condition, which Nietzsche saw as the defining psychological crisis of modernity, creates a very specific kind of person. A person who is genuinely in pain, in the diffuse and sourless way that meaninglessness produces pain, but who cannot articulate the pain clearly enough to address it at its actual source, and who is therefore enormously susceptible to anything that offers relief from the pain without requiring the harder work of actually identifying and addressing its cause. Positive thinking is, in this context, a remarkably effective palliative, not because it addresses the meaninglessness, because it provides something to do about the feelings that meaninglessness produces. A set of practices, a community of similarly practicing people, a language for describing your inner state, and a set of tools for managing it. All of this provides structure, belonging, and the sense of purposeful activity in exactly the gap where genuine meaning used to be. It is, in other words, not a solution to the problem Nietzsche identified, it is a symptom of it. A symptom that has been commodified and sold back to the people experiencing it as a cure. This is not a conspiracy. Nobody designed positive thinking culture as a deliberate mechanism for preventing people from finding genuine meaning. It arose organically from the genuine need of a large number of people who are suffering in a diffuse and unaddressed way, and who find in the practices and community of positive thinking something that makes the suffering more manageable. The appeal is real, and the relief it offers is real as far as it goes. But it does not go far enough. And the reason it doesn't is precisely because it treats the symptom, the bad feelings, rather than the source, the meaninglessness that generates them. And treating a symptom without addressing the source produces a particular result that anyone who has been in the positive thinking ecosystem long enough will recognize: the need for more treatment, the affirmations that worked for a while and then stopped working, the gratitude practice that lifted the mood temporarily and then required increasing doses to maintain the same effect, the vision board that felt transformative for a season and then became just another thing on the wall.
the constant, effortful, ongoing maintenance required to keep the managed positivity functioning, with the implicit awareness that if the maintenance stops, something unaddressed will be waiting. Nietzsche's diagnosis of this is specific and uncomfortable. It is the behavior of a person who is avoiding the question their suffering is asking. The question is not, how do I feel better? The question is, what would make my life actually meaningful? And those are not the same question. The first has many available answers, most of them temporary. The second has only one category of answer, and it requires a kind of honesty and a kind of courage that positive thinking culture, with its systematic avoidance of negative experience, specifically does not develop.
The meaningful life in Nietzsche's account is not the comfortable life or the positive life. It is the life that is oriented toward something specific and genuine and chosen rather than inherited or defaulted into. Something that the person can genuinely say is worth the effort of their existence, worth the difficulty, the uncertainty, the inevitable suffering that a life aimed at anything real will involve. Finding that thing or building it, because Nietzsche believes it is built rather than found, requires a confrontation with the question that positive thinking most persistently avoids. What do you actually want? Not what makes you feel good, not what gets approval, not what fits the vision board aesthetic. What do you actually, genuinely, at the deepest accessible level, care about? What would make the effort of your existence feel to you, specifically and personally, worthwhile? That question is not comfortable. The honest answer to it, which rarely arrives quickly and almost never arrives without significant work, is not comfortable either. It requires a real engagement with what's missing, what's not working, what the suffering is pointing at. It requires, in other words, exactly the kind of engagement with difficult experience that positive thinking is specifically designed to bypass. But from that engagement, from the honest confrontation with the actual source of the suffering, rather than just its surface manifestations, something becomes possible that the positive thinking framework, for all its practices and communities and beautiful aesthetics, cannot produce. Direction, real direction, the specific sense of being pointed towards something that is genuinely yours, that you have genuinely chosen, that makes the difficulty of pursuing it feel not like an obstacle to manage, but like a necessary and even welcome part of the journey. This is what Nietzsche was trying to get at. Not the elimination of negative feeling, the transformation of it into something that actually tells you where to go, the conversion of diffuse, meaningless suffering into directed, meaningful difficulty, which is not the same experience at all, even though from the outside both might look like someone who is not having an easy time. The person in the grip of meaningless suffering is being consumed by something that is going nowhere. The person engaged with genuine difficulty in service of genuine meaning is being built by something that is going somewhere specific. Both experiences are hard. Only one of them produces anything. And that brings us to the third truth, the one that is in some ways the strangest and most counterintuitive of all, the one about what Nietzsche meant by loving your fate and why it is so profoundly different from the positive thinking version of acceptance, even though they use the same language. Amor fati. love of fate. The phrase Nietzsche used to describe what he considered the highest possible orientation toward life, the orientation he aspired to himself, acknowledged he often fell short of, and believed was the mark of a genuine philosophical achievement rather than a natural personality trait. When people first encounter this phrase in the context of modern self-help culture, they often assume it means something like acceptance, like the spiritual practice of releasing resistance to what is, like the positive thinking adjacent idea that the path to peace is through non-opposition to circumstances. It does not mean any of those things, and the difference is not subtle. It is fundamental. It is the difference between a practice that makes difficult things easier to tolerate and a transformation that changes your fundamental relationship to the entirety of your existence. Here is what positive thinking does with difficulty. It tries to reduce its impact, to make it feel less bad, to find the silver lining that lets you tolerate the cloud, to generate a positive perspective on what would otherwise be an entirely negative experience. The direction of travel is always toward the elimination of discomfort, toward the replacement of the bad feeling with something more manageable. Here is what amor fati does. It does not try to reduce the impact of difficulty. It tries to actually want it, not to tolerate it, not to find the positive spin on it, not to accept it in the sense of gritting your teeth and making peace with what you can't change. To genuinely, actively, affirmatively want everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen, including and especially the painful parts. To say, not as a spiritual performance, but as a genuine orientation of will, yes, this, all of it, including the hard parts, I want this. That is a staggering demand. Nietzsche knew it was a staggering demand. He was not naively suggesting that this orientation arrives naturally or easily or is available to everyone who decides to pursue it. He was pointing at it as the highest achievement of a certain kind of philosophical work, the work of genuinely confronting your own existence fully, without the management systems, until something in you genuinely transforms its relationship to what is. Let's look at what actually makes this possible, because it is possible, and understanding how reveals something about the nature of genuine strength that positive thinking culture completely misses. The reason amor fati is possible, the reason it is not simply performed resignation dressed up in philosophical language, is that it rests on a specific kind of understanding that is only available through the honest engagement with difficulty rather than the avoidance of it. When you consistently avoid difficult experience, when you practice the positive reframe, when you redirect toward gratitude before you've actually processed what's hard, you maintain a specific relationship to your circumstances. They are things that are happening to you, and your job is to manage how they affect you. You are the reactor, the circumstances are the actor, and however skillfully you manage your reactions, you remain fundamentally in a passive relationship to your own life. When you consistently face difficult experience, when you allow yourself to actually be present to the hard thing, to feel it, to understand what it's doing and what it's pointing at, something begins to shift in this relationship, gradually, over time, through the accumulation of genuinely met difficulty.
the realization that cannot be told to you but has to be experienced, that you are more than what happens to you, that your capacity for genuine engagement with difficulty is itself a form of strength that does not depend on the circumstances being favorable, that you can meet what comes, not always gracefully, not always without pain, but genuinely, fully, with your whole self, and find that the meeting itself produces something.
From this realization, which is not an intellectual conclusion, but an embodied discovery, available only through actual practice, something extraordinary becomes possible. The active affirmation of your own existence, including its difficult parts. Not because the difficult parts are secretly good, or because you've found the silver lining, or because you've successfully reframed them into something more palatable. Because the difficult parts are yours. They are the specific material from which your specific self has been built. They are inseparable from everything that makes you particular, specific, genuinely you, rather than the generic, comfortable alternative. This is what Nietzsche meant when he wrote about amor fati. And when it's fully understood, the contrast with positive thinking becomes stark. Positive thinking says, try not to feel bad about the difficult parts. Amor fati says the difficult parts are part of what you love when you love your life, not despite the difficulty, including it. The loss that changed you, the failure that redirected you, the suffering that built in you capacities you could not have developed any other way. These are not things to be minimized or reframed or managed into palatability. They are things to be claimed, to be acknowledged as genuinely, specifically, irreplaceably yours. There is a thought experiment Nietzsche proposed, the eternal recurrence, that is the most direct challenge to the positive thinking framework I know of. Imagine that your life, exactly as it has been, will repeat infinitely. Every joy, every loss, every embarrassment, every moment of genuine beauty, every moment of genuine pain, every decision and its consequences, exactly forever. The positive thinking response to this thought experiment is to feel motivated to choose more positive thoughts, to optimize for better feelings, to work toward a version of your life that you'd be more comfortable with repeating. Nietzsche's response was different. He was asking, can you get to the point where your relationship to your life as it actually is, not as you'd prefer it to be, is such that the thought of its infinite repetition is not horrifying, but is something you could actively want? Could you say yes, again, this, exactly this, not because everything has been perfect, because everything has been yours, fully engaged with, genuinely lived, and you have built a relationship to your own existence that is affirmative rather than managed? That is the challenge, and the positive thinking industry, with its focus on feeling better about circumstances rather than building a genuine relationship to them, does not prepare anyone for it. In fact, it moves in precisely the opposite direction. It makes people more dependent on good feelings and less capable of the genuine engagement with all feelings that amor fati requires. The path to amor fati, if it can be called a path, runs directly through the things positive thinking is designed to avoid. Through the honest acknowledgement of what's difficult, through the genuine processing of painful experience rather than its replacement with something more comfortable. Through the development, slowly and imperfectly, of the capacity to be fully present to your own life, all of it without the mediation of a management system. It is not quick, it is not comfortable,
it does not produce the immediate relief that a positive affirmation can produce. But what it produces instead for the person who is willing to do the work is something that the positive thinking movement has been promising its customers for decades and has almost never actually delivered. A genuine relationship to your own existence, a real sense of your own strength, the specific, quiet, tested confidence of a person who has met what their life actually contains and has found in the meeting that they are more than adequate to it. Not because everything is fine, because they are real.
There's something almost poignant about the positive thinking movement if you look at it from the right angle. It is, at its heart, a collection of people who are genuinely suffering in the diffuse, unaddressed, hard-to-name way that meaninglessness and unprocessed difficulty produce, and who are trying with genuine sincerity and genuine effort to feel better. The desire is real, the need is real, the attempt is real. What is not real, what is, in Nietzsche's terms, a kind of practiced unreality, is the framework through which the attempt is being made. The framework that says your feelings are the problem and the solution is to choose different ones. The framework that treats genuine difficulty as an error to be corrected rather than information to be processed. The framework that promises strength while systematically preventing the development of it by removing the very friction that strength requires. Nietzsche's alternative is not the antidepressant of suffering as virtue or the performance of toughness. It is something more precise and more valuable than either. The honest engagement with your actual experience, the genuine processing of your genuine difficulty, the slow development of a relationship with your own life that is based on actual contact rather than managed distance. This produces something the positive thinking framework almost never does: real resilience, the kind that is available at 3 in the morning, the kind that doesn't require maintenance, the kind that you have because you've successfully avoided all difficulty, but because you've met enough of it genuinely to know that meeting it is something you're capable of. It produces real clarity, because when you stop managing your inner states and start actually processing them, the information they contain becomes available. The anxiety that was telling you something important about your direction, the grief that was pointing at what genuinely mattered, the anger that was indicating where something genuinely wrong was happening. All of that information, systematically suppressed by the positive thinking machinery, becomes accessible and usable. And it produces the beginning of something like amor fati. Not immediately, not comfortably, not in a way you can put on a poster or package into a course, but gradually, through the accumulated experience of genuine engagement with your actual life, you develop a relationship to your own existence that is affirmative in a way that managed positivity can only approximate. You start to want your life, not the curated version, not the reframed version, the actual one, specific, complicated, shot through with difficulty and beauty in proportions you did not choose and cannot entirely control. That wanting, genuine, tested, honest, is what Nietzsche meant by yes to life. Not the bright, unearned yes of someone who has successfully avoided looking at the hard parts. The deeper, more durable yes of someone who has looked at everything and chosen from that place of genuine seeing to be fully here. That yes is available to you. It does not come from an affirmation.
It does not come from a vision board. It does not come from any practice that teaches you to feel better about your life before you've actually engaged with it. It comes from engagement, from honesty, from the willingness to let what's actually there be actually there, and to find in that willingness something more solid than any managed comfort could ever provide. Nietzsche chose that path, in pain, in obscurity, in the specific difficulty of a life that offered very little of what positive thinking culture would consider the ingredients of a good life. And he chose it not because it was easier, but because he could not respect the alternative. You don't have to choose it entirely or immediately or without difficulty, but you can start choosing it a little more, one honest response at a time, one unmanaged feeling at a time, one moment of actual engagement rather than careful reframe at a time. That is enough to begin. And beginning, even imperfectly, even with all the ambivalence intact, is everything.